So I went back, made their Bloody Marys, and as I went to serve them, there was a bump in the road, and the Bloody Marys went everywhere, all over them. And they said, "Oh my gosh, we had matching shirts." I said, "You still have matching shirts."
Oh my gosh. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and I'm a former Chief Culture Officer and Head of People. I've seen and heard it all, so truly no judgments. This is a safe space to get real and explore the cringy, confusing, or chaotic side of office life. So grab your coffee, kick back in your swivel chair, and listen up. We've got a high-flying show for you today. We have a question from a pregnant woman whose company won't give her an upgrade, a manager struggling between friendship and duty, and an employee who's been gifted with a kind of creepy royal title. But before we get into that, I'm excited to welcome a genuine trailblazer in the development of some of the most recognizable, impactful corporate cultures today. We're here with Ann Rhoades, who was an executive founding member at JetBlue, a vice president at Southwest Airlines, and an executive vice president at DoubleTree Hotels. Ann builds cultures centered around the principle that employee satisfaction correlates to customer approval. Ann's book, Built on Values, is based on her 25 plus years of pioneering creative corporate cultures. Ann, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here, Maya. Thank you for having me.
So I think we should just jump right in. I've got to ask about, if you don't mind, take me through your history at all these various airlines and hospitality, industry places, and how you took your experience at Southwest and brought that into creating JetBlue from scratch.
Been so fun. Actually, it's interesting because I never should have been in the people side. I actually started after receiving my MBA in the finance side, which is logical for an MBA, certainly then and even more so now, and went to work for a bank called First Interstate Bank. And during that time, I actually ended up transferring to Dallas because my husband took a position there and went to work for a bank in Dallas. Where I met Herb Kelleher in a fun situation, as typical with Herb, and went to become the first people leader at Southwest Airlines and got to learn how to build a values-centered organization that is systematically created to keep the people-centric culture that today so many people talk about and want to have, but don't have a systematic way of doing it. And then got on, and then of course went to DoubleTree from there, and actually worked for another Kelleher who told me it was his cousin, that Herb was his cousin, but he wasn't. That's the only reason I took the interview. And then went to DoubleTree and actually, JetBlue, and got to start JetBlue, which was an airline that started almost 25 years ago in New York, the end of 1999. And we were told we would never make it. So I got to take everything I had learned at Southwest and put into DoubleTree and then create it from scratch at JetBlue. And it's been a wonderful ride, and then served on the board for almost 20 years after going inside and being there until the IPO, at which point I wanted to move back to New Mexico, and then went on the board and started in parallel while I was at JetBlue, my own company called Peopleink, and we're 25 years old now too. And we build values-based organizations.
So tell me about that transition, though, of what did you learn at Southwest Airlines to bring into your experience at creating JetBlue from scratch?
First of all, I learned that you have to be systematic on culture. And it starts with defining who you want to be. So at JetBlue, we started before we even flew, when we only had 9 people. We sat in a room and said, who do we want to be when we grow up? What are the values and the behaviors that build this brand? Because it's a branding exercise. And we came up with 5 values that are consistent today, 25 years later. We hire for those values. We also hire around the behaviors that represent each one of those values. We then hold people accountable for getting the right results the right way using the values and the behaviors. And we also then at the same time build in accountability around those and performance management systems around the values, not just what have you achieved, but how did you achieve it? We also then built the values into the brand, which we think is critical. And at the end of the day, then we keep track of, and we think it's all about continuous improvement. So it's a 5-step process, and we created it and got to develop it at the start of JetBlue. And today it's still alive and well, 25 years later.
And tell me a little bit more about, could you give me some examples, for instance, about when you're doing hiring, for instance, for a values-based culture? How do you go about that?
It was so interesting starting JetBlue, and that's the greatest example because there was a 3.5% unemployment rate in New York, which is basically full employment. And not only that, but many airlines, several airlines, over 12 airlines had gone broke in the prior 18 months. So nobody, even that was available, wanted to work for an airline. And we wanted to create an airline that every New Yorker loved. And if you know New York, you know they don't probably love everything. So we were sure that, and everyone was sure that we wouldn't make it. We also opened at JFK, which is a tough airport to open in. No one had done that before. So we honestly took about 28 people. For every 28 we saw, we hired one. We were not able to meet the original target of when we were supposed to start because I went to the board and said, I don't want to start with the wrong players. It's critical that we hire people that represent our values and the behaviors we want, because every single interaction with people, we're going to see that. So we started a behavioral hiring model and created it for JetBlue, where we ask questions on past behavior, which is over 90% predictive for future behavior. So one of our examples, integrity. So we interviewed a technician, and it was very hard to find technicians that were going to be able to fly our type of aircraft, which was a very advanced, technically aircraft. It's an Airbus 320, which were the aircraft we started with. Very tough to fly. And you had to come with some technical skills. So we had a technician we interviewed, and he told us a story about not being able to find a job for 2 years because he had literally not signed off on an aircraft for an airline that he had wanted to work for all of his life. And 90 days into the job, what he found out was he was not able to sign off on an aircraft he didn't think was safe. He didn't do it. He wasn't rehireable in New York because it's a very small community of technical expertise at that time. And so everyone knew that he had been fired by the airline, but we couldn't wait to hire him. And he ended up becoming a manager at JetBlue because one of our values is integrity, with one of the behaviors being make sure that you tell the truth regardless of the outcomes. He's the kind of guy you always want in the technical area because he will not sign off on an unsafe aircraft. So we hired around the behaviors we had defined. And that's why today you see when you fly JetBlue, like Southwest, you see what the values are. And it just so happens that one that we both have, besides safety and integrity, is fun. And so I would guarantee you that if you see a JetBlue employee or a Southwest employee, you're going to see somebody who has a sense of humor and is fun.
So, I mean, you know this because we've talked about it in the past, but my biggest value that I love at work in general, and that I love in creating the cultures that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, is that fun aspect. And as much as it sounds like it's a very soft sort of skill or a sort of very soft kind of thing, it actually, I find it to be much more important than people, give it credit for. So,
well, it's been tons of fun. I mean, I've enjoyed every day in every position that I've had. And I went from the banking world into another world of aviation in a unique way. I actually was given the title of senior vice president when women were not given that title in Texas in a bank I was in, which was a very large bank, and it was a mercantile bank. And what I was asked to do was, we were having a tough time. Real estate loans had made it very difficult, and the federal government was coming in and overseeing the banks, and we knew we were going to have a tough time. So I was asked to go as the head of HR for that bank to go and present to the board a plan for keeping our A players. So I went up, and the minute I got there, an individual to my left said, "Sit down, honey. I want to right now." And so I sat down, and I thought, well, it was all males in the room. Of course, typically bank boards then were pretty much male. And when I went to make the presentation, he told me not to sit up. I mean, stand up. I'm sorry. I thought that was strange. And I didn't. I made the presentation sitting down. When they went to leave, I went to stand up to shake their hands. And he said, "Stay seated." And I thought, geez, okay. Anyhow, I stayed seated. They left, and pretty soon he and I were the only two in the room. And I said, why did you have me not stand up and have more impact, which I typically would do? He said, because you have toilet paper coming out of the back of your suit. And that's how I met Herb Kelleher. And the very next day, he offered me a job as the head of people for Southwest. So we had an hilarious beginning, and it continued that way. I was there 9 years, and I enjoyed every day. He made it fun, but he also had a huge accountability around all the numbers. If you look at Southwest and JetBlue, you'll see that they have accountability around all the numbers, and they exceed expectations. So it's not soft. It's not unmeasurable. They do it by, as you say, having fun and enjoying your job is how they keep people. And today, a lot of companies have learned from them and use both of them as examples of how to run an organization and make sure your people have fun, but they're also very productive, high performance.
Well, I love that, because exactly that. You need to have the certain like guardrails in order to not make it a culture where everybody is just entitled to do whatever, they feel like, but that there are rules. And again, those values, fun is just one of the many values that you bring forward within a mix of important values that you want for your community that you're creating within an organization.
What was a fun learning, right? So exactly. To me, it's all about fun, which I do not go to work a day if I can't have fun. You should see what Herb Kelleher did. I mean, the funnest thing. So one day, you have to hear this story. So Herb Kelleher took his own money and every year took $100,000 and gave $10,000 scholarships to students of our line employees, not directors, not officers. And so he and I would do the interviews. So one time, he loves animals. He had a ranch, and he absolutely loves animals. And so we had an individual, one of the applicants that I chose to come interview with us, he and I would do the final interviews, was going to be a veterinarian. He was going to veterinarian school in Oklahoma, and his mom worked for us on the line in Oklahoma at our station there. And so he came in and he interviewed, and he says to Herb says to him, why do you want to be a veterinarian? He said, I've had animals all my life since I was a kid. And he said, what type of animals do you like? And he said, snakes. Herb goes, snakes? Those aren't animals. I mean, he hated snakes. And so he said, what do you mean you grew up with snakes? How do you grow up with snakes? He said, well, I teach them who I am, and they know. He said, I raise boa constrictors. Herb goes, what? And Whoa. He said, I raise boa constrictors. And he said, they know who I am. When I pet them, their back goes up. Herb goes, that's not true. And he unzips a Reebok bag with a yellow boa constrictor. He starts going around my office. I hate snakes. And Herb jumps on my desk, so I have no place to go. I'm sitting in the chair with the kid. And I said, are you sure he's okay? He goes, yeah. He picks him up and puts him around my neck. Well, they can kill you, right? I mean, they can squeeze your neck. And then he says to Herb, let me show you. Well, Herb doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want the snake around his, but I have a picture of it. He put it around his neck. And so the kid, when he left, Herb goes, I can't believe that. He did show us that the snake would recognize who he was, and he went through that. And so when he left, Herb goes, every year these kids have to come back and they have to show us. And then he would renew the scholarship, right? He said, that one never has to come back. You renewed that scholarship for 4 years right now. It was so much fun.
But I like that he gave the scholarship, despite the fact that it wasn't his cup of tea. Doesn't mean that the guy doesn't know his stuff.
It was the funniest thing, but it was a yellow boa constrictor. And to this day, I don't like snakes, but I'm not as afraid of them because of his doing that. But believe me, I wouldn't be around a boa constrictor. In fact, that part in the zoos, when I'm taking my nieces and nephews, I move from it pretty fast. They love the snakes, but I'll never forget that going around my office. Who invited that one? It was a stitch.
That's really funny. It's really funny, So, Ann, I love to ask in every episode, what was your weirdest workplace moment? Because I feel like that's how we learn from other people's experiences.
I have so many it would take all day to tell you, but I have one in particular that's fun. When I came out of my MBA in finance, one would think, which every MBA that I knew of at the time, in fact, my whole class, went to work for banks. And so I went to work for a bank called First Interstate, which is now part of Wells Fargo. And the CEO quickly decided that I was going to be a high potential player for him. And he decided that I should go and make the rounds running a branch. So I went to the branch and I made my first and last loan. And it was for a it was for a herd of alpacas that an individual who I thought, wow, he's very cool. He's an entrepreneur. He wants to have alpacas so he can get all this wool and make all these great sweaters. And so I actually made him a loan. Later on, of course, we found out that shouldn't have been done. And it didn't, as I said, it's my first and last loan. And then I also hired a head teller for that bank. And she ended up being one of the biggest thieves we've ever had. So I did learn that it wasn't just about whether you want to be an entrepreneur or whether you have the experience. I learned it's really about values. And that was my first learning, but it's one that's stayed with me for 25 to 30 years, literally. But it was fun.
So you haven't always had the track record of hiring brilliantly. That's
In fact, I think that's what made me decide I had to learn how to hire, was that I not only made a bad mistake by picking a customer that maybe was an entrepreneur but wasn't a good business person, and then secondly, by hiring a head of tellers. And by the way, she took all the money out in Christmas wrap, so it looked like she bought a lot of gifts at lunch. So I also learned that.
I'm going to pick your brain just a little bit more. Any other really weird moments?
All kinds of weird moments. So I decided that when I was at Southwest that I would work every job in operations. So one time I went and helped the guys with the baggage handlers. I would help them load the planes with the bags. But I decided one time that I would be a flight attendant. And so I actually bought the uniform. And so I'm on a flight, and the flight in Southwest in the old days, they had a row in the back, and it had two sets of 3-person seats, and they were facing each other. And it was for teams and friends. So this group on a Saturday, I was fine. And this group of men, all 4 of them in the same shirt, I asked them when I was taking their drink order, what is it? Where are you going? Or why are you wearing matching shirts? And they said, well, we're going to a golf tournament. And I thought, oh, how cool. So I went back, made their Bloody Marys. And as I went to serve them, there was a bump in the road and the Bloody Marys went everywhere all over them. And they said, oh my gosh, we had matching shirts. I said, you still have matching shirts.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe that. Okay. Well, that was a great line, I have to say. You at least you delivered a one-liner to.
And Herb told me, he sent me a note on Monday. He said, from now on, you can work every job, but not flight attendant.
Oh, if it was only a seltzer that they had ordered, it would have been fine.
We would have been fine, but Bloody Marys, not so much.
Not so much. That's very funny. But also, that's the way you learn, just like you said. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. So with that, I'm going to now switch. Before we get to our listener questions, it's time for us to stay up to date with the week in work. Our take on a recent news story that might affect how we work or how we think about work life. So we wanted to hear your insights about recent changes at Southwest. Reuters recently published a piece about Southwest Airlines denting their worker-first culture with its first set of layoffs in the company's 54-year history. 15% of Southwest's non-frontline staff were let go. CEO Bob Jordan says layoffs represent a monumental shift for the airline. Southwest's corporate headcount increased 28% since 2019, and last year the company spent 99% of its revenue on operating costs. A new investor who holds a third of the board seats applied stiff pressure for Jordan to produce a profit turnaround, and Southwest has always been celebrated for its philosophy that happier employees equal happier customers. So the article then goes on to quote an employee who says they are honestly not sure if the company culture can recover. So I know this is close to your heart. And what do you think? Is this really the beginning of the end of this company's famed culture?
Well, first of all, I think all of us have been going through several challenges in the last few years in terms of the workforce. I will tell you that I don't believe the culture will change. Will it change to the extent that you won't see people having fun? There are 50-some thousand employees at Southwest. the people they brought in on the board. And of course, there are always changes when you change board members and ownership. That's a given. It's just going to change. But do I think the culture will change when you have 50-some thousand people that every day have fun and enjoy it? And you have to remember, this cuts were at the corporate level. And when the cuts are at the corporate level, they did not cut their players that are in the field, that are operating every day, that touch every customer, also internal and
Which
external.
I think is very admirable, I should say. I really think it's really admirable.
I do too. And I happen to know two of the new board members. One was the president of Marriott, Dave Grissom. He's a great guy. He understands great cultures. And the other one was actually one of the senior players at Virgin. And Virgin has a great culture. So I don't think they're going to do away with the culture. I think that the people will continue to live and breathe. Those are people that have those values. You know, you're not changing the values of the workforce. What you're changing are making some difficult decisions that have not happened in the past. But that's not to say that they won't, it isn't necessary. We have to remember, too, the employees have profit sharing. So if this moves the stock, it will also be advantageous for the employees because they own, last time I looked, 12% of the company. So if you look at it that way, that's also their retirement program. And maybe these changes will cause the stock to move, which will be very positive for the employees, and they will understand that. And how it's explained, I hope they over-communicated instead of under-communicated, why they were doing, why they had to do it, and why, in fact, it would be positive for the employees long term.
I love that you sort of gave us the optimistic spin on how the employees are taken care of, and that we do hope that, all of these, the communication that Southwest hopefully did internally will make sure that people can understand the picture a little bit better and still have a promising future in the company. And I'm also hopeful that the culture won't change very much. It's clear that you have faith in Southwest and in the integrity of their base culture. So I hope that despite the difficulty of these layoffs, the company will be successful. But now it's time to go on a quick break. When we come back, we have a question from a pregnant employee who apparently is important enough to send abroad, but that doesn't mean that the trip should be comfortable for her. Interesting. See you after the break. Make digital accessibility effortless with Sensit. At Sensit, we're breaking barriers to ensure the digital world is accessible for everyone. With over a decade of expertise, we empower software companies to design, build, and sustain accessibility throughout their development lifecycle. Our specialty? Crafting precise, no-fuss VPATs, or voluntary product accessibility templates, to keep your software compliant. We integrate seamlessly with your product team to streamline workflows, reduce friction, and deliver results at lightning speed. Fast turnarounds, expert support, accessibility made easy. Ready to level up? Request a demo today at sensit360.com. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. I'm here with culture creation expert Ann Rhoades. And with all your experience in the aviation industry, I thought it was only fitting to offer you a few travel-related questions. So in our first listener question, a pregnant employee is given 0 flight options. Let's check it out. Hi, Workplace Weirdness. I work for a large company. In our company, I'm the expert in a specific subject field. Recently, our company hired a team abroad and decided to fly me out to train the new employees on this team. I was a bit reluctant given that I am 6 months pregnant. But the company insisted the trip was important, so I agreed. However, after they booked the flight for me, I realized that it would be a 14-hour flight in coach, in the middle seat. I went to my manager to ask about the possibility of switching to premium economy, but he said that we don't have the budget for that. I then asked about the possibility of switching to an aisle seat, but he said that's not possible because that also costs extra. Now I'm stuck with this horrible flight, and with the flights and hotels booked, I can't get out of it. It just doesn't feel right, but what can I do about this now? 14 hours, whoa. Middle seat and pregnant. That sounds like a nightmare. What's your take, Ann?
First of all, that's not acceptable in my book, but other than looking for a new job, a couple things. One is I would make the case that if, for instance, a 14-hour flight, if you were in business class, let's just say best case, or even extra leg room, which most airlines now offer up front. The front row seats have more leg room and they have others dispersed throughout the cabin. So one of the things I would make the case for is if you have more comfortable passage and trip, obviously that means that when you get there, perhaps you could go to work, because those flights typically land early in the morning. And what some companies, including Google, have found is that if they'd send people in a better situation, for instance, more legroom or business class, that when they get there, they are productive and they can work that day. And so they actually have made the case that they find financially that it's just as acceptable and sometimes more, and costs them less when the person can work that day rather than waiting till the next day and taking a break that whole day. So I would make the case that the financial case, which there is, for flying in business class, if possible, or at least extra legroom, there's very little expense to put you in the end of the row. The difference is minimal. So there's no reason. And frankly, I would make the case, in the worst case, I would have my doctor give me a statement saying that 14-hour flight, I need to have more room, or I need to have a break when I get there. And in that case, they should then allow you to have the day off when you get there and not have to go to work immediately. It's just a given. I mean, first of all, she's the expert. So given that you want to retain your experts, I would accommodate what she needs to be, what she believes is an accommodation. And frankly, if I were her, I might go be the expert in another company, frankly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Completely agree. And I love that you brought up that ROI option. In other words, the idea is to bring a data to the conversation that shows it's either you have to give me an extra day to recuperate, which costs you this much money, or spring for an aisle seat. I mean, she's not even asking for business class. Yeah. Let's be aware. But I also agree with you. If someone's 6 months pregnant, I mean, it's okay to also allow them to fly comfortably. If you want them to be in good enough shape to be able to think when they hit the ground. Anyway, and this just does sort of go against, the sort of long-term retention, I think, of the person who's writing in. So it's not somebody who's asking to be treated with special circumstances for no reason. There's a lot of reasons why this manager should probably not be so short-sighted. Let's move on to our next question. So our next listener question is about that awkward, amorphous place between being a manager and being a friend. Here we go. Hello, Workplace Weirdness. I got myself in a really awful situation. I think through becoming too close to the people I'm supposed to manage. I'm a senior flight attendant working international routes, and I'm in charge of the flight attendant crew on my flights. But I'm also around the same age, and we're all friends who hang out together in our layovers, going to restaurants and clubs together in these exotic cities, and we sometimes share crash pads. However, a colleague of mine, who is hilarious, and I've known them for years, has recently been showing up for flights with the shakes and sweating. I think it's basically a hangover to the point of DTs, delirium tremors. A few times it's happened when they were on reserve, but other times it's been for their scheduled flights. I don't want to hurt their career, but I also have a responsibility to the passengers and to my airlines to provide the safest transport possible. How can I help this employee without hurting them at the same time? Ann?
Well, first of all, your responsibility as a leader is literally to have a conversation with that individual, because this is a safety issue. And the people you are keeping safe deserve your having a conversation when you have observed this yourself. It's different if it's hearsay and then you sit someone down and tell them what you've heard and have a conversation. But in this case, I would sit them down and start with, because I care about you. And I also care about the safety of the people that put their trust in us and are flying us. And I noticed, and then give the specifics, and do it quicker rather than later. The minute you see it is when you should do it the first time. But since it's already happened a few times, I would definitely say that you need to immediately have that conversation and tell them you care about them. I don't think being a friend and being a leader are mutually exclusive. So I have had many friends who were people that I worked with, but there were times you had to have those crucial conversations around, this is an issue. I've seen it myself. I've observed it. We need to fix it. And let's have a plan to fix it. If you need to leave, or if you need me to help you get some help before you fly again, but you cannot fly with this happening again. This is a one-time event. This isn't something you get to have 2 or 3 strikes for. Let's talk about this and let's come up with a plan, because I would put it in writing so that you go on the record with it, because that needs to happen when it's a safety issue. And I would close with, it's because I care about you. And because we are friends, I'm also your leader. And this needs to be addressed. You're a leader for a reason. They trust you to make the tough decisions and to make sure that you ensure the safety of those people that are flying and our customers, and the safety, frankly, of your partners, the entire flight crew. It's also the people that you love and you care about and you fly with frequently that you're actually keeping safe.
I feel for this person because I can understand how there is that camaraderie that's created by being on a flight with others who are the same age, and you're in different exotic cities and all that. And so that creates like a real bond. But this is one of those moments where possibly this person is early in their career where they really have to stand up and say, I have to make a choice here. Is it more important to be a leader right now or to be a friend? And I love that, Ann, you did say that they can do both. But let's say they don't feel that is so easy. Right now, I would opt more for that leadership role because it's a matter of safety. It's a matter of responsibility. And one of my favorite lines that you said actually is, this will be the first and last time we have this conversation. So it is kind and firm at the same time. And I think that's important. That's the standpoint from which I hope this listener has this conversation. In other words, they're going to come and still be with a caring attitude, but have a certain firmness, because that is their role. And this is the time to step up and to do that role.
Having been there several times too, I would just add, many times they will come thank you because you're saving their job along with making sure that everyone's safe on the flights. So it has a dual purpose. You care about them enough to help them save their job. And you'd be surprised how many people thank you later. They just needed someone to say, hey, let's stop, let's go forward, but let's do it a different way.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. Now we'll move from one difficult conversation to another. Every week we cover one question addressing the kind of cringeworthy office event that can make you Google expat life in Tahiti. This week's cringeworthy question involves a staff trainer who has been given a weird and unwanted royal title. So let's listen. Hello, Workplace Weirdness. I work for an international corporation and we have an office in Asia. I was sent there to help lead one of the teams for a limited time. Some of the guys on the team refer to me pretty frequently as our beautiful white princess. Apparently, this seems to draw no concern from anyone. It seems like they think this is a normal and appropriate term to call me. But Maya, it creeps me out. I'm not exactly their manager, but I'm on that level and do help in leading the team. It's very uncomfortable for me. Several people, at least 4 or 5, have used that phrase. I'm not sure if making it a big deal will make everyone else feel uncomfortable with me or think that I'm very uptight and erase all the rapport that we've built over time. What should I do? Signed, not royalty. Ugh, that is awkward when cultural norms clash. And what is your take?
Well, first of all, I think they're paying you a compliment, whether or not you believe it's a compliment. They don't understand that for you, that is not acceptable. So what I would do is thank them, first of all, because you consider it a compliment, obviously. But in our culture, and I think it's appropriate to help train them so it won't happen again, for instance. In our culture, that is something that we don't do. I appreciate the fact that you gave me the compliment, but let's talk about how going forward you're going to refer to me so that we have mutual agreement, and so at the same time that it feels good to both of us. And then think of the title, think of how you would want to be recognized. And I bet you that they're going to be so pleased because they probably don't know how or what the norm is and how what is acceptable and what isn't. This may be their first time they've ever worked with someone like yourself, a female that has the expertise and that they really honestly think they're paying a compliment to when in fact they aren't in your eyes. It's all in the eyes of the beholder, right? And the person receiving the communication. So just let them know, but do it with a smile and come up with a name and tell them what you'd like to be referred to, how you'd like to be referred to. You'd be surprised. First of all, I think the Asian people are wonderful people, and they always want to, frankly, be in a situation where everyone's happy. And I think they think that makes you happy. So let them know what you prefer, and you'll be surprised. They'll be fine with that.
When working in another culture, to just be flexible to differences. You have to come into it with an open mind in general. But also, I think, there's a moment of, before you even approach them, perhaps to find out the cultural significance. Like, is this mockery? Is it respect? Is it the compliment? I don't know. In certain cultures, this might be, it could be a test. I mean, in some, I understand how somebody coming from the outside might not understand exactly, like, wait, is that a nice thing? I don't know. Are they testing me in some way? But also, I think that there's a way to handle it. Maybe, again, keeping that rapport somehow, something light, make a joke of it. Like, in other words, I like what you said. You're saying handle it straight on. Say, this doesn't make me comfortable. I would prefer if you called me X, whatever. If you called me by my name. But I think there's also maybe a moment where somebody could make a sort of lighter joke, like, oh, if I'm the princess, I command you to stop. Or I don't know, I can't think of a good one right now. But the idea is that maybe there's a way to do it with the same rapport. But there might be ways to just do it a little bit more light. That's the way I'm feeling. Sometimes I think in certain cultures, there people can test you. Like I've been in situations myself where I felt like where I don't know if I want to get into the details of it, to be honest, but where people called me certain things in order to see if I would react. And the whole thing was, don't take the bait, just sort of go through your day, smile, and just be like, okay. Not in this case, though. I do want to tell this listener, I do think I agree with you. It sounds like it's a compliment.
And having worked in Asia, they think beautiful is a compliment. And I'm sure they feel the same way about princes. So I think just the fact that they knew you were coming over to teach them, you have their respect before you even get there in all likelihood. I mean, they want to learn from you. You're going there to teach them. I think that it is meant as a compliment. I have been in Asia and they keep saying, beautiful lady. They'll say, it's very interesting. I think they think in America, those are compliments and they're trying to give it to you. So I would go on with a positive attitude. I wouldn't go in with an attitude they're trying to bait you, because too many people are saying it and they're probably just very, very nice people who respect you and who think that is a sign of respect. But
exactly.
You need to make it clear.
I think the best piece of advice is exactly that, to say, I would love to be called, I don't know, Mrs. So-and-so, or, or Maya, or whatever is the most comfortable for you. And I think that's the best way to handle it. You're absolutely right. From middle seats to royal titles, it's clear that sometimes we all will experience turbulence in any workplace. That's our show today. I want to thank you, Ann, for sharing your culture-building skills and expertise with us today. It's been so much fun and very eye-opening as well. I learned a lot. And I hope that we see you again soon.
I loved being here. Thanks so much. And fun is a great word. Don't ever work anywhere where you don't have fun, because today it's a requirement for me to, even if I'm just meeting with a customer, we kid, we play. It's fun.
Yeah, I agree. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. I agree. That's the whole.
The end of the day, that's my advice to everyone. And when I mentor people that say, I just want to know, is this the place I should be? I always say, are you enjoying it? Are you learning? Ask yourself those questions. And if not, there are lots of opportunities out there. Regardless of what you hear about job cuts right now, there are lots of opportunities for great players. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. The environment doesn't matter. It matters who you are and what you represent and how you live life happily every day, I hope, at whatever you're doing.
Amen. I love it. That's exactly my philosophy, and I completely agree. We'll be back soon with more workplace weirdness. If you've enjoyed our dive into the strange and funny side of office life, don't forget to subscribe. And if you've got some weirdness in the workplace, drop us an email at info@workplace-weirdness.com or leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/workplace weirdness. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. Until next time, this is Maya Kadar Kovalsky reminding you to embrace the quirks and make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show is produced by me, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell. Thanks to Billy Salibi and the rest of the team at Podify who helped engineer this episode. Thanks also to Ann Rhoades for joining us on today's episode. And thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.